Thank you, Jay. I'm going to try to speak like this because the microphone might be more for the camera, but Rabbi Per in the back, can you guys hear me? It's okay? Okay, so I'm going to speak loudly. It's a little bit easier. First of all, we have a tradition, Postlin B'chvod Ha'achsanya. We always want to open by thanking the host. So here we have sort of a double layer of a host. On the one hand, I want to thank Rabbi Per and the Shir Chadash for physically hosting us where we are tonight, but also the three shuls that was mentioned earlier, Beit Knesset Migdal Shoshanim and Shir Chadash and Ohel Nechama for sponsoring and for coming together to bring us together to be able to discuss this. And I want to highlight that piece just for a moment, which is so important, because perhaps the most therapeutic point that I'm going to make the entire night is exactly this. I've given a number of lectures like this, and we debate, should we be on Zoom, should we be live stream, should we do it in person? And there is something very therapeutic about just coming together, about just being with each other, about greeting one another together, different shuls coming together, welcoming each other, joining together. It's just simply a microcosm of what's been going on in the general amongst the people of Israel, and it's something very special. So I want to thank all the hosts, and thank you for coming out tonight as well. I also want to thank Ido in the back for doing all the audio visual. Toda rabba lecha, Ido alkov, mamash. I hope that people at home who couldn't make it. I have a second introductory comment which I want to make. I feel a bit like an imposter, and I want to share with you why. On the one hand, I am a clinical psychologist, I'm a rabbi, I have a lot of experience, unfortunately, in trauma and in crisis management. But in a certain way I'm an imposter because, as Jay had alluded to earlier, I'm one of those that does not have anybody serving. And there are people here who have children serving, grandchildren serving, many grandchildren serving, many children serving, and I don't. But I'm here. So I feel a little bit like I'm an imposter. But on the other hand, there are different layers. We each contribute that which we have to contribute. And I hope that even with that, so to speak, deficiency that I have, we only made Aliyah relatively recently. Relatively speaking, my family is younger than the people who are serving. But just wanted to take that and understand that's where I'm coming from as well, although I have spoken to a lot of families and I've worked with a lot of families who do have people who are serving either in Gaza, in the Otef, and beyond. The last introductory comment that I'll make, and then we're going to jump right in, is that I can only speak for so long about this. There's only so much we can cover in 40 or 45 minutes. I'm going to try my best. I have a little clock down here. I'm going to try my best to cover a lot of ground. And I'm going to explain to you what I'm doing, and I'm going to explain to you the role and the purpose and the order of what I'm doing. So you'll see what I'm doing. I'm going to go at a rather quick pace, but when I'm done, I'll open it up to any questions you might have. So I'm hoping that I'll answer the questions that you have through the presentation. I'll explain to you what I'm going to do in just a moment. But please file away the questions that you have, and we'll have ample time, Bezrat Hashem, at the end of the presentation to take whatever questions that we have time for, and then if not, afterwards I'll be available as well. The first thing I've learned in this role that I have, in general, in a crisis, in a trauma situation, but particularly here, is the importance of other people talking and us listening. I don't have time right now, but if I went through a room, and I've done this with rooms before, and I said to you, okay, let's raise by a show of hands, who here right now has an element in the past 5-6 weeks feels sad? Raise your hand. Sad. Okay. Who here has felt angry? Let's up that. Who's felt furious? Okay. Who's scared? Okay. Who here is inspired? Uplifted. Maybe in a certain way, even, I wouldn't say joyful in the sense of what's going on, but just proud to be part of the Jewish people. Look at this range of emotions in a room, right? I just picked 6 pretty obvious ones, but the range is there, and we all experience them, and we all experience them probably at different times. You know, it was very interesting. Yesterday, my oldest daughter is in university in the States, and she was in Washington, D.C. yesterday with 300,000 other Jews, other people, not all Jews, all the people supporting Israel supporters. And I watched some of the highlights of what she was showing me, and Interestingly enough, the entire presentation also, it oscillated between all these emotions: incredible sadness, anger, fear, passion, inspiration, uplift, Torah. I mean, like tefillah. It was an unbelievable thing to see, and it's important to understand that we all are going to experience different things, but to listen to the people across from us. And we have too large of a crowd to do it now, but I would go one by one and ask you what your most prominent emotion is. And I've done it in rooms with 20, 30 people, and it's an incredible thing because everybody is different. So I'm going to try to assume that this was a brief introduction, but imagine that I tried to listen as best I could. This is what we're going to do tonight. The first thing we have to do, I translated a lot of the slides into Hebrew. It's my pleasure to forward the slides to Jay or to anybody else who can forward and disseminate the slides as well. The first thing we have to do is, in order to understand the interventions, we have to understand exactly what trauma is. We use that word a lot, the word trauma, but we have to understand what it is from a theoretical perspective. And then we're going to get into tachlis, like they said. We're going to understand, what does it mean? How do we protect ourselves? And then when we protect ourselves, how can we then help ourselves and help others? And then we'll do a smattering of coping skills. We'll try to do this all in about 35 minutes. We'll see. I don't know how much we'll get to. We'll try to get to everything. We'll try to get through everything as quickly as we can. What does trauma really mean? Now, trauma is a word we throw around, but it's important to have the definition very clear. There are two categories we have in psychology. One is a crisis, and one is a trauma. And we're going to see it's so important that we know that distinction, because if we understand the distinction, we'll understand why the situation that we're in right now is so uniquely difficult for all of us, and also for those who are in the helping position, for example, like psychologists like myself. Crisis is the extreme event that takes place. A mashber. A crisis can be any type of, God forbid, shalom neda, lo aleinu, any type of challenge. Things that we deal with, things that happen, things that as psychologists we have to interact with. But the trauma is the body and brain's reaction to that event. That's the trauma. Okay? The crisis is the event. The trauma is our body and brains. Two separate things, as we'll see in a moment. Two separate things. It's the reaction that we have. The mashber leads to the trauma. The crisis leads to the trauma. But in order to really understand the trauma, we have to first understand the crisis. And we're not going to go into all the details, the different therapeutic approaches to how this happens. But much research, especially when it comes to veterans, there's been a lot of research, especially done in America with regards to different veterans, let's say, who served in Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, things like that. And unfortunately, we're applying it here as well. That we understand the crisis, we can then understand the trauma. Let me give you an example. I'm going to say a blanket, shalom neda. We should never know any of them. Unfortunately, we're in the middle of one of them. An example of a crisis could be a shooting in a shul, a fire, a terror attack, a war, a car accident, a mugging. These are all crises. These are all things that we've heard of. I hope none of us have experienced, but to some degree we probably have in some form, and especially the war piece. The trauma is the trauma response, which then results from the crisis itself. So if we understand the crisis, we can then understand the trauma and the trauma response. So if, again, shalom neda, when we're shooting in shul, there might be a fear of leaving home, a fire, you might become more withdrawn, you might become more anxious, you might become more avoidant. All of these types of traumas could potentially be a response to what the actual crisis is itself. But if we want to address the trauma response, we have to understand the crisis first. And if we understand the crisis, we'll more effectively understand the trauma. These are some examples of trauma that I want to highlight for us, and we're going to come back to it, bli neder, a little bit later. These are classic examples of trauma responses to all different types of things. A fear of leaving home, and we can apply them as we're thinking now. We can think about, as we're sitting here now, we can think to ourselves, which ones apply to us or people that we know, if it is. Fear of leaving home, becoming withdrawn, anxious, avoidant, depressed, confused, very common one. Changes in sleeping or eating patterns, that might come up later as well. These could all be trauma responses. And in order to better understand those, we really want to ideally be able to understand the crisis first. So now here's the thing. Our brain, in the context of a crisis, our brain, when my wonderful colleague, Rabbi Dr. Ari Sittner, is a trauma expert from the States, he likes to say our brain looks for the 3 S's. We want to have, now in the Hebrew it doesn't really look as good. But the S's do look good in the English. That's what you can tell what the mother tongue is. But somebody will figure that out. Security, stability, and survival. When there's a crisis going on, a person wants to feel safe. The brain, adaptively, wants to feel safe, wants to feel secure, wants to have a sense of stability, consistency, understand what's going to be, what's going to come next, okay? And you start thinking where this is going to go. And of course, survival. That's the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal, both of how our body reacts and how our brain thinks, is one that is leading towards survival. Security, stability, survival. And that's what we're looking for. Is it safe? Is there food? Is there shelter? And we can think to ourselves now, even B'yameinu, nowadays, where many people, for example, when the war broke out, so we'll go straight to the supermarket, we'll make sure that we have enough food, we have enough things, make sure our phones are charged, make sure the safe room has all of the above, etc. Make sure you're communicating with people. Can I communicate? And then we want to know this. Where is the danger and is it over? Now that could be any type of crisis. Now let's take it out of the war crisis for now. Let's say, God forbid, somebody passes away tragically. God forbid, somebody passes away tragically. And there's a crisis. So as an example, I worked in schools for many years. And if a parent passes away, sadly such a situation happened, and the children want to know these things. They want to know, am I safe? Will it happen to me? Will it happen to my parent? How do I keep myself safe? Will I be able to make it? Is there a danger? In this case, the danger would be illness, let's say, in the case of the parent. Is it over? And we can apply it, but we have to understand, as I mentioned, we have to understand the crisis first to know what we're applying it to. And now this is what becomes unique for us in our tekufah, in this time period. What makes it unique is this. Are we currently in a state of crisis or trauma? What's the answer? Both. Who said that? Louder. Both, of course, right? The answer is both. That's the challenge. We're simultaneously in the crisis. When we look back at the 3 S's that we want to provide for ourselves, security, stability, survival, we're still in the midst of the crisis itself. That's a big challenge. We're still looking for security. We're still looking for stability. We're still looking for survival. While on the other hand, we're also trying to limit the effect of the crisis, which would be the trauma. And so we have an overlapping challenge. How do we do that? How do we, on the one hand, live in the crisis while also in that same moment prevent ourselves from having the trauma effect? And that makes this reality so difficult. And I think an extra layer to it is that right now no one really knows when it's, you can't say it's, when is the danger? This line. Where is it? No. When is it going to end? I don't know. So it's a big challenge. It's not an insurmountable challenge, but it's a challenge. And so we're in the context of having a trauma and a crisis at the same time. And it's okay to say this. This is not a bad sentence. You're going to say we're all poised to be traumatized. What I mean by that sentence is that it will affect us. It will affect us. I don't think there's anything wrong with saying that, with acknowledging the fact that us and the next generation after us and the generation after that, we will be affected by it. There's no way that we can't be. I would even say that probably if we're not affected by it, there's something that's going on. But the question then is, how do we at least avoid it to a degree? We can't. But, and this is the key, a 5 is not a 10, I would even say a 9 is not a 10. That if we go in with the attitude, understanding that we can develop certain principles of how, if we understand the trauma, that we can at least come out of this, not being traumatized to a 10 on a scale of 1 to 10, but even a 5 or a 9 or a 6, then what it does is it helps us, it helps everybody who's reliant upon us. It could be children, grandchildren, neighbors, friends, the community, frankly, probably the entire people of Medinat Yisrael. And so that's our work. That's our work as we're living in a state of crisis and trauma to be able to say, I can do this to a degree. But it may not be perfect, but I can lower it. And that itself is ambitious, but it's doable. Okay. So we know what the crisis is. We're in the middle of a war. What trauma really is is essentially the brain's response to protect us from a trauma. I'll give you an example. Let's say a person who's traumatized, they're always hypervigilant. They're always on the lookout, right? We can understand that very well because it wants to keep us safe and to protect us. Let's say we don't sleep because we're traumatized by something. Why? Because that's also a protective device. I mean, that's something, we tend to look at those words and think of them pejoratively, a defense mechanism. But it's kishmo keinu, as they say. It is as its name is. It's a defense. It's protecting us. And that's okay to be protected. It's okay for us to protect ourselves to a degree. The question is, how do we do it? That's what a trauma response is. And then if we're always on, though, and this is where it becomes a problem, it's almost like, and my colleague likes to use this example, it's like imagine having that computer where everything is running and then it overheats. And so our job is to figure out, even in the midst of a crisis, and that's where the challenge is there a way that we can minimize and lower the trauma response for ourselves and for our loved ones? Whether they be serving, whether they're coming home for a Shabbos or for any type of break that they're lucky enough to get. How can we help ourselves and how can we help them? So it's important to understand certain pieces of how trauma works. Understand, which is very unique. We often think that everything that we do starts from our brain, maybe even more specifically from our prefrontal cortex, this is the CEO of our brain, and it goes down to the rest of us. Sometimes in trauma, because of the way the brain works, it skips that part and it goes right to the body. Sometimes you guys can think to yourselves, if you've ever had this experience, where you know you're experiencing something before you even know what you're experiencing. You feel it in your body. You feel this example, right? You see a tightness in the chest. You might feel butterflies in the stomach. You might feel a tension. I have a tendency, and my children make fun of me, when my back knows that I'm tense before I'm ever tense, I roll my shoulder like this. They make fun of me a lot about it, which is a good thing also. Humor is good, especially if you, I think my children love me. They make fun of me about it, which is good. But then I also know that I'm stressed when they point it out to me. I'll be like, yeah, and then it hits me. But it's important to understand yourselves. And I would even add to it, it's important, again, everything that I'm going to say that applies to us also applies to those who we love and who we're looking out for as well. And then when it happens, it's important to understand that there's probably a message being told to us. There's something being communicated. And it's not starting here, it's starting here, it's starting here, it's starting here. So I have to be able to say, well, what's the message? I have to learn to embrace that message because it's sending me something that's important. When you've embraced that message, take this home with you. And I'll review everything. I know I'm going through a lot. There's no right or wrong feeling to have. It's so important. Don't judge yourself and don't judge others. I sat in a room with about 30 yeshiva guys. And it was fascinating. Some of the guys were upset that the other guys were able to learn. How dare you be able to focus when there's a war going on 2 hours from here? How could you not be broken by this? And the other guys were like, "What's wrong with you? Like, I feel so bad for you that you can't, that you're out of control. Or are you so callous? Are you so overreactive? But everybody's different. And it's important for us, first and foremost, not to judge ourselves. We might see somebody who's completely stoic, functioning at a high level, somebody who's absolutely broken and can't even get up in the morning. There is no right or wrong. And there's so many layers to it. Who's to say? Who's to judge? In a similar question, they asked one of the Gedolim of our generation, incredible person, they said, should all the yeshiva guys go home or should they stay? And he said exactly this, who's to judge? There's one mother who has, I think she has 2 children. One of the children's in Gaza, fighting. So she couldn't bear to have a second child, even in Jerusalem studying Torah. It was too much for the mother. But who are we to judge? We don't know that. We don't know what a person's history is. We don't know any of the myriad of contributing factors that would go into anybody's response, even into our own responses. And so we shouldn't judge the emotional response that we have or don't have. And it's healthier for us, and it's healthier for each other, it's healthier for all of us as a community together. So how do we reduce the trauma? How do we reduce the trauma? The goal, and this is really why it's even harder than any other type of context, is because we have to somehow convince ourselves that we're not in danger. How am I gonna do that? How can I reduce trauma, especially in 2023, especially in the midst of a war? Is that possible? How can I reduce the trauma to teach my brain that I'm really not in danger? Is that possible even? And I'll add to it. The brain was not designed for the world of internet or social media. You know what they call it when you just scroll and you look for all the bad things? You know what they call the name, but you know what you call it? They call it doom scrolling, where people just would go and look through the scrolling. How much bad stuff can they get? And we're not wired. Our brains cannot process all of that information. And we have to make a distinction. There is a difference for those who are in the war, those who are observing the war. And like I said, I was discussing with one of my friends. I said, there's so many different levels to this. There are some people who are in Gaza, some people who are in the Otef, some people who are in the Kiryah, some people have children who are in any of those places. And then we have us, myself, for example, but I live here. I've lived here for 3.5 years. And then there are people in America. And I was telling my colleagues, therapists in America, I said, it's a double challenge. Even though I don't have anybody serving right now, but I'm trying to live in this country, take care of my family, do my best to take care of those around me but you're in New Jersey. So it's a little bit easier for you to a degree because you're not experiencing the crisis in the same way, so you'll be able to handle the trauma better, perhaps. But that's the confusion. And that's our goal. Our goal is to limit the trauma response to a degree, if we can, by trying to at least communicate to our brains to some degree, however much we can, that our lives here, sitting here, for example, in Shir Chadash, where right now, us, individuals, are not right now in danger. That's different than someone who's sitting in Gaza. And are we able to do that? Are we able to help them when they come home to understand that as well? And that's a challenge. And it's really a challenge. So here we go. So I want to share with you this. And sorry, I'm just going to do a quick time check. Okay. This is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. By show of hands, anybody familiar with this? Maslow's hierarchy of needs? Okay. So what happened was, just to give you a 30-second brief history in the world of psychology, Freud studied people who were very, very ill. They were very psychologically ill. Came along Maslow, another Jewish fellow, Abraham Maslow, had a difficult upbringing, and he said, I don't want to study people who are ill. I want to study people who are successful. I want to know, how do people get to this, the top of the pyramid, to this idea of self-actualization, incredible meaning? How do I do that? And so what he pointed out was he created this hierarchy, and it's a big machlokes argument in the world of psychology exactly how rigid it is, but heuristically, it's very helpful, is that first we have to make sure that the physiological needs are met. Air, water, food, shelter, sleep, clothing. Then we have to make sure the safety needs are met. The next level up, personal security, employment, resources, etc. Love and belonging. Then we have to have that social connection, and then esteem, how we feel good about ourselves, and then ultimately the top is the self-actualization. And I think it's so important because we should never look askance at someone who wants to be here, making sure that these two things are taken care of for themselves and for their families, even if the ideal for certain people might be here. I'll give you an example. You could have children who are totally absorbed by davening, and they want to channel all of their energy into learning Torah or saying Tehillim or whatever it is. And then there are others who say, no, that's very religious, it's beautiful, but I just want to make sure that the people who are helping have water and food. And if we follow this, it's important guidelines that in order to produce for ourselves and those around us a sense of stability and security and safety, the S's that we mentioned, so we should try also to follow this. And thank God, I think it's intuitive because we do it, but it's not always intuitive. We'll see why in a moment. But to make sure that these needs are met as well. And we have to provide those for ourselves in a similar way. And we'll see, I'm going to apply all of this theory into the real stuff that we're going to do in a moment. And so what we have basically is 3 steps. Really, we want to try, first of all, to put out the fire. Okay, that means, to a degree, can we stabilize the crisis? Now, the crisis, again, for us, is going on around us. So the way that we have to stabilize it, perhaps, is disconnecting from the news, is not bombarding our brains, our hearts, our souls with all of the things that are out there. That helps us to, at least to a degree, to put out the fire. To a degree. And then after we've, to a degree, been able to maintain an element of stability, an element of control, if we can. It's not easy. Again, if a person is out in Gaza or has a child or a grandchild, not so easy, but we'll see. We have to at least try to fool ourselves to a degree because it protects us, because we're not wired to be on and hypervigilant 24/7 for 40 days and longer. The next then is, okay, if I can to a degree stabilize it, how can I treat the wounds? How can I help? How can I help myself? How can I help others? And then after that, how can I make meaning? And again, this may sound counter-religious, but it's psychologically smart. And we'll get here. But these 3 things, these steps help us, and we have to each apply it in our own lives, because each of our lives is different. It would be presumptuous of me to assume that I'm going to tell you how to do this. Because I don't know, each person here is different. I don't give, armchair psychologist answers. But I want to give you the principles so that you can know how to do it. So here we go. Let me just quickly do a quick review of some of the basic ideas we discussed, and then we get to the real practical, and then we're going to take questions. Crisis is the event. It leads to the trauma. The 3 things the brain seeks, craves: security, stability, survival. The unfortunate reality that we're in the midst of both, and the understanding that we're going to come out traumatized, in quotes, doesn't mean broken. It means affected. It means changed to some degree. Some of it will be positive. Some of it may not be. Is there a way that I can at least minimize the effect of the trauma on myself, on those who are around me, on our incredible chayalim who are out there protecting this amazing country for us, and so on? We're not wired to do this, to be always on and hypervigilant. So we have to learn, first of all, how the trauma affects our body, embrace it, be aware of it, see what the message is, interpret it. Don't judge the feeling, but accept it as it is, and then try to communicate to our brains that we're not in danger. How do we do that? Again, it's a little bit of a game, so to speak, by providing these needs as a heuristic, climbing from the bottom up. Put out the fire, treat the wounds, and then make meaning. Now, tachlis, here we go. I'm covering a lot. I hope it's been pretty clear so far, but we're going to now get to the tachlis of how this all applies in all the areas that we're talking about. The first is to allow ourselves sometimes to just sit in the emotions. When we fight emotions or we judge ourselves, the emotion often gets bigger. Sometimes it's okay to say, as the mayor of New York said, not okay. We're not okay. That's okay. And I'll even add, for those of you who have younger children, sometimes we get a question. A lot of parents ask me, I do a lot of parenting work. They'll say, is it okay for me to cry in front of my children? We'll get to some concrete tips if we have time later on as well. And the answer is yes. You're allowed to express yourself in front of your children, but I would beg you not to be out of control. It's okay for parents to see that a child is sad. It's okay for a child to see that a parent is sad, that a parent is crying. That's okay. But if they're losing control, that's scary to a child. And that's scary to us. And it takes a lot of self-awareness to pause. After the first week of the war, I don't know if it was the first week or the second week, I was walking, my 15-year-old daughter is a particularly perceptive young lady, and I must have been laughing about something. It was Shabbos, so I think it was the first or second week I was walking with her somewhere, and she said to me, wow, Abba, that's the first time you've smiled in 2 weeks. And I was like, whoa, so I didn't realize that. But that was a real moment of self-awareness for me, because I was like, wow. But on the other hand, it's healthy for her to see that, yes, this has shaken me. And so it's important to be mindful of that. Understand that we're not going to function optimally. And accept that. That's okay, without judgment. That's also okay. Because we're not okay. Avoid overexposure to the news. And don't fall into the control or the guilt trap. It's related to exposure to the news. I saw this incredible clip from an Israeli psychologist, something so powerful. He said, usually there are two reasons why we want to know everything real time. And we'll go to like every single website. We'll go to this website. If they don't have, maybe another website, someone got it first. That website got it. Some of the Americans got it for the Israelis because they avoided the censor. Why? So there are usually two reasons why. One is because I'll feel more in control. If I know what's going on, even though it's not near here, thank God, but I'll feel somehow better knowing exactly where Tzahal is and exactly what's going on and which hospital they're in and every move. It makes me feel like I have more control over the situation. In reality, does it actually give us any control over the situation? No, it just obsesses and it reinforces it. And I would imagine, I don't want to speak to this, but I would imagine it's especially true for those who have children or grandchildren who are surfing. There's a constant look to say, how can I find out more information? Even knowing that we're not going to get information. And if that's presumptuous, I apologize, but you'll tell me if that's accurate or not. And the second is the guilt trap. The guilt trap says, I'm part of Bnei Israel. I'm part of Am Yisrael. How could I feel a member of the Jewish people if I don't know every single detail of every single anything, every wounded soldier, every wounded civilian, every rocket, every lo aleinu, anybody who's fallen, shalom nida. I feel guilty. And the answer is also not. Because if it's going to break us, then that's not what's asked of us. And it's a delicate balance. Because on the one hand, I saw beautifully, I thought it was just a very good way of framing it. We should probably know just enough to allow us to focus and to be emotional when we daven, when we say Tehillim like we did to open the program tonight, but not enough that's going to make us totally dysfunctional. And it's a delicate balance. Sometimes we might overreach, sometimes we might honestly. When we catch ourselves realizing, wow, things kind of feel, I hate to say it, normal? I don't even know, whatever that means. And so you realize, no, that's not okay that I'm feeling normal. So you have to sort of walk that line very carefully. But again, allow yourself to sit in the emotions, no judgment, don't even process it, don't even think about it, accept it. No, you're not going to function optimally. We're going to tell us how to get out of those emotions in a moment. Avoid the overexposure and don't worry about the guilt trap. Now here we go. Let's talk about protecting ourselves from the trauma. Remember what we said. The trauma is our body's reaction, our mind's reaction to the crisis. Okay? So in order to do that, we have to set the stage, and this is true in mental health, by the way, as a parenthesis, for every area of mental health. Whenever, and this goes for adults, it goes for children as well, for parents providing for children, is that we always want to monitor our behavioral health. 3 basics. Are we eating, sleeping, and exercising? And it's not to feel guilty. Are we eating okay? That means be careful. We should be particularly mindful of what we put in our bodies, especially now. Are we sleeping? If it's possible. It's very difficult for many people to sleep. I totally understand that. And are we exercising? That we can do. It's very important because that sets the stage. That is the foundation for what it is that we're going to accomplish. That allows for that routine, that allows for the stability, that allows for us to have a deeper reservoir that we're going to have to draw on as we need to, as we move forward. Self-care. Self-care is so incredibly crucial. We feel guilty sometimes. Is it okay if I do something that I might enjoy? And the answer is, it's not a question of guilty or not guilty, but I would even dare say sometimes, not with indulgence, but to a degree, it's a mitzvah. If God forbid, somebody here was not feeling well during the war, would I say, no, you shouldn't, your throat's hurting, maybe you shouldn't have that antibiotic. That's indulgent, because that would make your throat feel better, and then you're going to be less sensitive to what's going on in Gaza. You would say, that's crazy, I take care of myself. So to a degree, that's the same idea. Again, I'm not saying we should have just for no reason parties and things like that, but to go for a walk, to listen to music, to go to a movie, to take care of yourself in a way that feeds your reservoir, that is absolutely crucial. And that will limit the trauma response and will also allow you to be better help to other people as well. Next piece, this is absolutely huge. creating a routine for yourself. Again, it goes back to the stability, the 3 S's. How do I have a sense of stability? How do I have a sense of safety and security when I'm in a normal routine? Think about a little child. A little child needs routine. When you go into a good preschool, right, kindergarten, almost always you'll see on the wall the Seder Hayom, right, the exact schedule for the day. I know when I walk in, then I have circle time, and then we have snack, and then we have this, and then we have that. And the predictability gives a sense of safety, security, and stability to a child, and it's also true for adults. I'll tell you something interesting. My father, Harini Kaparas Meshkova, passed away a little over 8 months ago, and I've been saying Kaddish. And sometimes, people Shalom Dav, those of us who said Kaddish, it can be a demand. It can be a demand to make sure there's always a minyan 3 times a day at least, always setting it up. But what I realized was that it's an amazing thing, is that every morning when I have to get up, and even if I'm exhausted, and even if I'm like, you know what, I just feel like I'd rather daven at home. I don't want to go try to find the minyan at this time, at that time, whatever. Or it's late at night and I work American hours, so I've got to try to find the Mariv at 11 o'clock at night. But it does this for me. It's a forced routine. It gives me a sense of stability and routine, knowing that I'm going 1, 2, 3 every day. And it's so important. And each of us on our own has to be able to try to find that. We all have different things that build into our routine, whether it's exercise, whether it's work, whatever it is. But find those tasks and do it. And now let me take you to the last ones, I think are the most important ones. Show up, first of all, for somebody else. It's an incredible protection to your own trauma. And it also protects their trauma. It's an incredible thing. WhatsApp somebody who you feel like, you know what, I just want to check in on them. It's an incredible thing to not be so, I don't mean this in a bad way, but like to not be so self-centered, but to be other-centered. Reach out to somebody else, especially, and it's funny, when I was researching this topic, so the research in America, I'm assuming it's the same here, probably even more so for us here, is that one of the most important interventions for a family member who has someone who's enlisted, who's deployed, is to have conversations with somebody else who has children in the same situation. To be able to share with them, to be able to talk with them, show up for them, provide a listening ear, and then like we said, normalize their reactions. Somebody says, I'm a train wreck, or I don't do that, I don't do train wreck. I've totally compartmentalized. I'm a robot. Doesn't matter. Whatever the person says, normalize it. And then what happens is you flip. Don't be alone. You be with people who are good for you, and you share, and you share, and you share, and you share. One of the most important, if not the most important rule when it comes to trauma and protecting from trauma and treating, God forbid, if we have issues of post-traumatic stress disorder, the PTSD, which happens further down the road if it does happen, is to be able to articulate in words that which we're feeling. If we're able to move it, just scientifically, from the parts of the brain that are more emotional, the amygdala to the prefrontal cortex, it allows us the ability to address it. Those of you who might be holding in the great Mr. Rogers, yeah? South Africa, they didn't have Mr. Rogers? Oh, you missed out, no wonder. They missed out in South Africa. So Mr. Rogers used to teach little children, he would say, if you can mention it, you can manage it. It was godless. It was incredible greatness, Mr. Rogers, teaching in the 1970s. You know what I'm saying? This was before psychology became what it is now, and everybody's sharing. But in those days, it was before his time. And then I would encourage this. Express yourself in any type of form. Drawing, music, dance, journaling, same idea, but give any expression to it in a way that you feel is constructive. Now, oh boy, the hour is late. Okay, let me just give you some other simple ideas, and then I'll take questions, and then because I know the hour is late. These are all things that you can actually look up online, okay? And they're really, really helpful. It's like a toolbox, okay? Because what works for me may not work for you. What works for you may not work for you. But the goal is to have your toolbox that you have. You can train yourself. I just want to give you a shout out, a potential. Rabbi Sittner, who I mentioned earlier, there's a good chance that he might be coming in. You keep your eyes out. I'll send it to the shuls here to forward if he actually is coming in. But if he does come in, he's going to run a workshop on a new technique, 10 minutes, on how a person can address any of the physiological signs that are distressing to them and eliminate them. It's cutting edge. So if he does come, keep your eye out for that. That will add that. I don't know that yet, but that will be part of your toolbox. If it is, it's an amazing thing. It's a little bit, what? It's the name of it is called SAF-T. It's called like SAFE-T or ART, which you'll see. You can look it up online, and we'll see. I hope he's able to get here. As of now, we're hoping for next week. We'll see if he does. It's an incredible technique. If it's if it's as good as it sounds, but he happens to be very special, so I would trust him. So here we go. Diaphragmatic belly or paced breathing. Look online. You ever see how a baby breathes? A little baby, always breathes into the diaphragm. So like this, like a balloon. We as adults, very often, we chest breathe. And that makes us more tense because you can feel all the muscles here tensing. So go online and look at courses. How can I learn how to belly breathe? Doesn't matter what age you're at. You think you know how to breathe. It's an incredible thing. And if you can use that, you can learn to relax your body. Tool number 1. Number 2, progressive muscle relaxation. I would try it now, but the hour is late. I could actually do that in the room with you here. I'll try it with you for a second. We'll do it for 30 seconds, like this. Watch this. Everybody take your shoulders, okay, which is usually where the tension is, and the trapezius muscles here. Put your shoulder up to your ears as high as you can, both to look as awkward and weird as you think that I might look, and then make it hurt. I don't want to cause any pain to anybody here, but I kind of do. So you'll see, hold it higher. Pain? You're in pain?
Okay.
Okay, no, hold it. That's good. I want you to be in pain. Now hold on, you're not done. That just means that you got there. You're starting. That's good. Okay, great. Now watch this. Now, when you want to do one, just do you're really in pain, so you're really uncomfortable, like really. Now I'm going to count down from 10, and when I'm done, we're going to lower our shoulders like and breathe out. You ready? So we're going to go 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. Higher. Keep it tight. 5 until it's really uncomfortable. 4, 3, 2, and now lower your shoulders and exhale. Slow. Did anybody feel a release or no? Yeah, some people do, some people don't. But that's part of the toolbox. You can do all the muscles in your body. You can release the tension by paradoxically increasing the tension. You increase the tension, you can actually do it with all your muscles. Again, you can find it online, different techniques. Problem solving. When we're overwhelmed by anxious thoughts, we have to learn how to organize our thoughts. Write them down. Talk it through with somebody. I would include here, there is no shame, there's only greatness in seeking help. I know of, I think I got an email today from one of the networks that I'm a part of, 5,000 volunteer therapists who are basically on call to help anybody who needs any assistance. I can't attest to the quality of all of them, but could you imagine 5,000 psychologists, therapists, etc., who are dedicating their time to be able to just help others who are here. Some of them in America, some of us are here. It's an incredible thing. They'll help you with this. This is a huge deal. Helpful thinking, cognitive restructuring. I want to teach you a phrase which I learned while I was researching for this presentation, the similar one that I gave a couple of weeks ago. There's something in the psychology literature, it's called vicarious traumatization. And that we often as therapists, but all of us, I think, as part of Klal Yisrael now, are experiencing, where it could be a trauma happens to somebody else, and it's like a secondary trauma in a certain way. It's vicariously I'm traumatized. Because even if it didn't directly happen to me, even though it's hard to say that as part of the Jewish people, one of the differences is actually probably what's going on for us here, the typical trauma, but then we experience the trauma vicariously. So I was listening to a presentation, cutting edge, and the presenter mentioned a phrase which I thought was so powerful to me, that if there's vicarious traumatization, there's also vicarious resilience. That there's vicarious resilience. How many of us, I can speak for myself, I don't want to speak, I was paying a shiva call this week, and I came out of the shiva call being like, oh my gosh, I felt uplifted. I felt incredibly empowered. My wife was up north with our children at an army base with chayalim, and she came back almost invigorated. And you're thinking to yourself, this is unbelievable. Mika Amcha Yisrael. But that's vicarious resilience. When we can look to other people sometimes and draw from their strength. Not just, God forbid, to draw from their trauma, and to what we say in halakha, nosei be'olim chaveiro, to be able to handle someone else's difficulties, which is such an important midah, but we can also grow and draw from their inspiration. That if there's vicarious traumatization, there's also, importantly, vicarious resilience. That would be an example of helpful thinking. If you're looking at something really bad on the internet and you're upset by it, find something positive. You could. There's a lot of good out there as well. A lot of positives out there as well. And then, of course, this will end with this, reinforce social connections. It's the most important thing. Don't go it alone. Especially, I would add, it's interesting. We live in Yerushalayim. It's a big city. It's not like living in a small, community where, like on a Shabbos, for example, the gates are up and everybody is out on the streets, sort of. It's different a little bit. It's sometimes harder. There are a lot of pluses about it, but it's also harder sometimes. Go out of your way. Reach out to somebody. Have them reach out to you. Reinforce those social connections. Someone who you want to be around. Somebody maybe who's going through something similar to you are. No two situations are exactly the same. But that's going to protect us. Please God, we should not experience the trauma at a 10. But if we can get it down to a 5, a 4, a 3, whatever it is, that will help us and that will help those around us. Okay, so we went through the theory. We have a lot of skills. We have an entire toolbox, whatever resonates with all of you. It's my pleasure. I will forward. I have more stuff at the end of the slides for parenting, but we're not going to have time because it's already well after 8:30. But I want to make sure that I open the floor to any questions. Any questions, any particulars, any clarifications, anything you want to add, correct? My pleasure. Yeah, Zahav.
Thank you very much. I just have a general question, and I'm looking for some possible answers. When someone says to you, how do you feel? What might be an appropriate possible suggestions for an answer? Because so far, I'm not satisfied.
Right. So Zahav asks a great question. She says, it's awkward, right? It's like really uncomfortable. Someone says, how are you? Yeah. And you're like, there are like 16 ways that you want to answer that question, and none of them is like, oh, I'm doing great, I'm good. No, right? So I think first, the question's a great question. I would say like this. I think first of all, you have to know who you're talking to. Sometimes it's like a platitude. It's sort of just like, how are you? It's like, how's the weather? It's not really, they're not really looking for an answer, they're not really looking for an answer, And then I think it really depends. If somebody really you can share, I think it depends on how you really are doing. I think you have to have an answer. So I've heard different variations, right? Yeah. Variations are, given the circumstance, I'm doing my best, Some people don't even feel like they want to do that. I'm plugging along, we're just managing. I like, what answer that I like, I say, I'm trying my best. I am. I'm trying. If not my best, I'm trying. I'm working hard, especially given the circumstances. But I think it really depends on who you're talking to, what you feel like communicating, and also, do you really want to get into that conversation? You have to, there's so many variables that go into the question that I think it really depends on all of them to decide how you actually want to answer that question. Right, exactly. Right, that's right. Do you want? Right now, I'm actually. I've been thinking about the cognitive restructuring right now, and then usually people will just walk away from you because they'll be like, "I don't even know what she's saying," and that's good. That's what I wanted. I heard some people say, and it really, listen. And humor, laughing a little bit, is also okay. It really is, and I really mean it. It's. I heard so. Yeah.
Rather than saying, "How are you? How was your day?"
Mm-hmm. They could say, what was your day like, right? Something more concrete, less abstract, right. But I think all those variables go into it, and most importantly, depends on who you're talking to and what you really feel like sharing. I think that's a big difference. Yeah.
What about chemical relaxants like alcohol, cannabis,
Okay, so great question. What about other? I wouldn't even call them unconventional. They're quite conventional. Alcohol, cannabis, medication, things like that. I would say like this. I think we have to be very careful. I think that there are times when it's called for, and I think it's time when it's not called for. And I don't think that using it indiscriminately without measure is ever going to be okay. It's going to come to backfire. Yeah, okay. So no, I'm just answering the question. So I think it really depends. I think that an occasional use of really any of those, but if it's used safely and moderately, then I think in the moment, depending on the crisis the person's experiencing, can be very, very helpful. But I think that it really depends. So for example, let's use the easiest example. If you have a prescription for a benzodiazepine, and which is like an anti-anxiety medication, that could be very helpful. If a person is not sleeping, right? The person says, look, like I just don't sleep at night, and I can't keep like this anymore. So very carefully and cautiously to take a medication prescribed by a physician, maybe monitored. Sometimes I'll recommend that, I'm not a physician, but I'll sometimes quarterback things. I'll recommend that somebody who's not going through that issue at that moment, it could be a spouse, it could be a child, it could be a friend, to monitor the disbursement of the medication to make sure it doesn't lead to an abusive situation. So those are situations where we have to look out for each other, but I think that in proper measure to help us through a distressing situation, I think that it would be okay. In my opinion, yeah. Well, yeah, we'll go.
I think a lot of the concept things that are going on help the people who are doing them.
So I'm glad you just said that, because it reminded me of one part of the slide, which I didn't say, which I'm going to say right now. All of these help us go from being passive to active. That's the goal, right? We're sitting here, and I'm not serving, but I want to know that I'm not just sitting here. I want to be active. What can I do? These are all things that are going to help me become more active. When we've taken care of the wounds, right, and we have the emotional, social, and the connections, and then we go to meaning making, which is what you would put it there, chesed and unity and tehillim and emunah, all different type of mitzvot. That's the end goal, because it involves groups of people. It involves us being proactive. It's a huge deal. I'm glad you brought that up, because I forgot to highlight it. Don't be passive. The more active we can be, the better we're going to come out of the situation.
So based on what you said, I'm expecting you to bring the scotch and Shabbos.
Yeah.
I use this formula. When somebody asks me in these times, how are you? I say, I'm functioning.
Yeah.
That's exactly the truth.
Yeah, but that's a good.
Great, but
It's that last part that you just said. It's the truth. It's the truth. You know, somebody told me they don't like to say now Shabbat Shalom. They want to say Shetihiyah Shabbat Shalom. You know, a phrase that we haven't had. You know, that it should be a Shabbat Shalom, not that it is a Shabbat Shalom. Okay, again, everybody has their own. You know, or the news like Shabbat Shalom v'shaket. You know, the different formulations that we see now that are different. But Shetihiyah or Shetihiyah Shabbat Shalom v'shaket. Yeah, Jay.
How would you recommend we navigate the interaction with our children? There's a desire to do, I'm okay, you're okay. On the one hand, we're experiencing our dread, but we don't want to provoke their anxiety by revealing our feelings, and we want to be supportive. So there's this delicate balance that we're trying to navigate. The young men come home, and we don't want to transfer our own anxiety to them. And can you give us some tips to navigating that?
Absolutely.
That delicate balance.
I'm going to share, again, going back to my imposter syndrome, sort of disclaimer, which is the following. I think that it's an incredible challenge, and I think that and I see it. We have a lot of friends who have children who are serving, or have spouses who are serving, and so on and so forth. My guess is that there's no one who thinks that people who love them are not worried about them. Like if I like to say to my patients, if I woke you up at 3 o'clock in the morning out of a deep sleep, and I said to you, is your mom worried that you're in a tank in Gaza? Like, of course, right? So they don't need to know that you're worried. I would say that this is my suggestion. We have a greater mandate to take care of ourselves so that we can then take care of them. And that goes for children who are serving, and that goes for our little kids who are at home. That, we can be running around. I was talking to a father who's doing an amazing amount of chesed, and then he told me in passing, he says, my wife's going to kill me. I haven't been home in who knows how many weeks. My kids are a mess. And gently, I said to him, I hear that, but just remember that you also have to take care of, that classic, the classic example on the airplane, that if the air pressure drops, put your mask on first. So I think that we, as the ones who are not on the front lines, have a greater mandate to be able to do that. And that's why we have to. That's why we're having this meeting tonight. To learn how to care for ourselves better, to develop the toolbox that we have, in order so that we can then also take care of them in a better way. And then this is very helpful. This heuristic is very helpful. When they come home, right, they just want, going back to the 3 S's, right? the same three S's that they want. Well, I'm not going to go back to the slides for the sake of time, but they want those three S's, right? The stability, the safety, and the survival. They want to come home. They want to make sure that if they're home for 24 hours, 36 hours, 48 hours, whatever short period of time it is, are their physiological needs being met? Just can we provide for them, right? Like, and that's also part of the greatness of what so much is going on, even going to the bases. You know, they saw this great video talking about vicarious resilience. Somebody put an entire truck filled with washing machines, right? You saw this, and you think to yourself, like, we talk about like what a basic need is. They're in the dirt. They're sweating. They're in the arm. Just to have a normally smelling whatever that means, the madim, the uniforms. That's like 101. Physiological needs. And I said to myself, what a beautiful gesture, because you might have jumped to something higher, right? And again, not to minimize it, the tzitzit and the tefillin, which are so important, but the washing machine, you know what I'm saying? Like, right? I'm saying you saw it, right? And then, again, the safety needs, you know, knowing that they have the resources, knowing that there's personal security. Going back to your point, Jay, the love and belonging, right? That sense of connection, that has to be your focus. And again, because if you're able to use this heuristic, the climbing, and they're all important pieces, but then if you then show up for someone, it'll be better for you as well, and also better for them. And it's again, I'm not minimizing it. It's a yeoman's effort, but I think that it's absolutely crucial, and I think it can help them and also help ourselves. Yeah.
Someone asked about the medicine, so I want to share. So it's something to be very attentive with. Like I saw already first the Rebbe, he talked about the cannabis. Someone asked if it was nice. Like I'm a therapist and I already saw really good things about the cannabis, but now I'm going to share what the Rebbe said, and I'm really pleased. So he said that like for the generation, let's say my age and a little bit more, a little bit less, that normally, like not normally, like I came from Brazil, so from Brazil is normal. People are more not so quick as the people with older age, because they have the internet, they have everything on the hand. So so then when you take the cannabis, you are more in a delay thing. And this is what we don't want. So everyone needs to see inside what I'm dealing now. And the other hand, Rabbi Nachman or Rabbi Nosson, he told about like when we take the medicine, so then we are just putting under the sand, under the carpet, the real thing. So let's say, of course, we can go to a good doctor, hopefully, and but the thing is, like in Kitzur, exercise, let's say you're not sleeping, and 90% it's because you're not doing a lot of exercise. Let's say you're tired, that means actually it's lack of exercise, So the normal things of our life that was normal like before, and just because of this thing on the internet, everything easy, we get disconnected of our body. And then we get the medicine to tap what we don't want to see. So this is the other side. The disease is everything. The hand, either we broke the hand or anything that happens to us is showing, let's say, I have a problem with my hand, so what I can do with the hand that now I can't do, and then now Hashem is showing me, okay, I want to paint. So I can't paint. So I can't wait to be ready of the hand, so then I can paint everything our body is intelligent. Hashem made it in this way. Okay. So can we see this?
Okay, thank you. One last question, because the hour is late, and then we're going to wrap it up. Gavin, yeah. I'm around afterwards with Davin Mariv, but I know the hour is almost 9 o'clock, so I want to wrap up. Yeah.
For those of us that have children, either in dangerous situations or not necessarily dangerous, but exposed to really terrible things, and who don't have the time to share, right now
Right.
because they get a day off every 3 weeks.
Right.
They kind of have to take that and just bottle it and deal with it later. What should we be looking for?
It's a great question.
Makes
So,
us think,
Gavin asked a very important question. I'm going to expand it and magnify it to apply to all of us, but particularly what Gavin was asking was, when we have children, let's say, that like Gavin does, who are serving and who are coming home for maybe a 24-hour Shabbos, maybe, and at that time they're going to be exhausted and they're going to sleep for X amount of hours, so there isn't time to go through all these toolboxes, all the tools, in the toolbox. How do we, and they're seeing or dealing with very difficult things, what do we do? How do we notice what's going on? How do we help them in the most effective way? But I would also add it to us as well. How do we notice ourselves? It's not to the same degree, the magnitude is much lower, but I would say the first thing is I think it's very important to create this context. Everybody's going to handle things differently. Is to create this context for them. The second is to notice changes in behavior. It's very important to be able to we spoke about behavioral health. You have to notice what are differences. Is a child not sleeping as a child, more emotional, less emotional? Are we able to notice? Be aware. And then I would say, and this is my suggestion, but I'm welcome to hear others, to give them the permission and the opportunity to address it with you without forcing it upon them. Gavin, imagine you were serving. I would say to you, Gavin, I noticed you had a really tough few weeks, and you look like you're not yourself. I just want you to know, everything's taken care of. Your laundry we've done, food's made, blah, 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 blah. I want you to, if you want to talk, we're here. You're not alone. You're not alone. You want to talk to me, you want to talk to mommy, you want to talk to whoever, whatever it is. Allow them both the opportunity and the permission to share whatever they need to share, but without forcing them into the share. And then knowing that they're supported, knowing that they're not alone, knowing that all of this is taken care of, 1, 2, and 3, and maybe even 4, by letting them know how proud you are just of what they're doing, that can then allow for that opportunity. And again, they may not be able to in that moment, unfortunately. As much as we'd love to be able to say, like, give them another 2 days so they can sleep, eat, break down, so to speak, from what they've seen, and then share and be able to process it. But right now, we don't have that luxury. So at least we can do everything shy of that, and they'll know that you're there for them without feeling like you're forcing it down their throat. Because that can make them resentful, withdraw, and that we don't want. That's the approach I would take. Okay, thank you all.